So I'm here with Steve from Zerto, and we're going to chat a little bit about what's going on with the company, and I think a new release is in the offing or is perhaps even out.
Yeah, correct. So we've got Zerto 7 coming out next month, and that's going to be very much focused around converging disaster recovery and backup and enhancing our capabilities in there. So if you look traditionally at how backup works, it's very much scheduled and periodic, and the reason it's that is because it's impacting on production every time you run it. We're seeing things slightly different, and actually continuous is the way forward. And what we're bringing in obviously 7.0 is an extension therefore of our continuous data protection that we've traditionally had for disaster recovery, but also giving you the capability to have long-term retention off the back of that with no impact on production. So that's going to give you a lot of flexibility over traditional solutions, as well as obviously providing you disaster recovery and backup in a single solution rather than a multi-point solution.
Okay, and in terms of the sort of backup landscape overall, is this something sort of new for the whole industry, or are other people doing similar things?
So it's new in the way we're doing it. What you'll see in the marketplace now is a lot of people are starting to talk about converged ER and backup, but the vast majority of providers or vendors who are talking about that are coming from the backup side of the world. Zerto is obviously coming from the disaster recovery side of the world, and the key aspect that we can therefore deliver is the continuous data protection. So rather than you having to schedule your backups and things like that, instead Zerto is continuously protecting your workloads and providing you recovery points every 5 seconds. So rather than you going back to last night's backup if, say, a file was deleted, instead you can recover to just seconds before the file was deleted. Same with ransomware. If ransomware encrypts your files, you can recover to just seconds before ransomware encrypted your files, and that's really powerful.
And in terms of the sort of need for that, were you getting end users coming to you saying, as you say, it's a pain to have to go to last night's or Monday's backup or whatever, we'd like to sort of flick back to 10 seconds ago or whatever? Or was it something you thought this would be excellent if we can develop it for the market?
Yeah, so this is something we're bringing at no extra cost to the Zerto products. So Zerto customers will be able to utilize this. And I guess what we're seeing in the marketplace is everyone wanting that instant, always on. Everyone wants everything now. No one's prepared to wait for it. And ultimately having this capability is going to deliver a far greater end user experience than you're going to get from potentially having to recover from a day before and a lot of productivity lost or whatever it might relate to from that scenario. And it's about minimising ultimately costs to businesses in times of disasters, or I mentioned ransomware earlier. That's a perfect example. How do you minimise the impact of those? And recovery is a big part of that.
And in terms of the scalability of the solution, because that's a big issue, there's more and more data being stored and a lot of it's sort of multimedia information. Has that proved at all challenging with this solution, or the way you do it? It doesn't matter whether we're storing a couple of terabytes or exabytes or zettabytes or whatever's on the horizon.
No, exactly. So Zerto software only. So again, that can be a differentiator to some of our competitors. There's no hardware cost for Zerto. I guess the key thing is we've always been enterprise class, and the key to being enterprise class is being able to scale. The way we scale essentially scales as your environment scales. And then on the back end, from a storage perspective, because we're software only, we can utilize storage that's already been invested in. So one of the key things with that means that customers aren't having to go and reinvest in a hardware appliance or anything like that. They can utilize stuff they've already have an investment in and ultimately sweat that asset.
Okay, and it might seem a bit sort of premature, bearing in mind you're just announcing this, but are there any other things on the roadmap that you'd like to add to the existing product, or go in a slightly different direction, or is everything sort of under control, if that's the right expression?
Yeah, I think obviously we're adding things like index and search, which you'd expect from any backup tool today, so that's coming in Zerto 7. I think we're going to be doing a lot of enhancements around these capabilities in the later releases as well. But on top of that, we're probably going to be looking at something like containerization and actually how those are protected. But right now it's just on the roadmap, no dates for anything like that just yet.
Sure. And I suppose finally, I've got to ask, and it may be completely irrelevant, but everyone's talking about Edge and IoT and 5G. Does that have any impact on Zerto's world, or is it just something you're aware of, but it doesn't really have an impact on data being stored and how you back it up and disaster recovery, etc.
Yeah, so I guess Zerto operates on server side, so some of that edge elements aren't really of that interest to us, but ultimately they have to store their data somewhere. Almost always it's going to be on that server side, and that's obviously where Zerto plays. So we do tie into that. Obviously 5G is going to have a potential to enhance people's bandwidth capabilities where maybe traditionally it's been expensive or prohibitive, and maybe that's something that could tie into some of the things we do, but largely that's sort of separate from where we sit in the market.
Okay, and is there anything else, any other sort of storage topics or anything specific to Zerto that we need to touch on?
No, I mean, as I said, the key here is being able to provide you that granularity with no production impact over traditionally. I mean, if we look at backups, since backup's been required, it's been done on production and it impacts production when you do it, which is why you schedule it on a nightly basis. You know, we've all been there, we were coming in the morning and backup's still running, services are running slow, end users are moaning. The idea with Zerto is because we're continuously protecting your workload, and we can do that because of the way we integrate with the platforms we integrate with no production impact, we can actually then deliver you those granularities that everyone wants, where you can actually recover to then just seconds before an issue occurred, rather than having to go back to last night's backup. It also means you have a single point solution, delivering entire capability around disaster recovery and backup. And actually mobility is a big use case for Zerto as well in there. Whereas traditionally you have a backup product, but that backup's only going to deliver you an RPO of say 24 hours. You're then going to need a disaster recovery tool or replication tool to provide the lower RPOs for disaster scenarios, and then you're going to need some orchestration on top of that. All three of those elements are built into the Zerto product and can be installed in just 2 hours.
Okay, so I suppose as we finish, when someone's aware that they need to be doing their backup and particularly their recovery in a more efficient manner, what would be the one or two key points for them to look out for when they're evaluating there are quite a lot of solutions out there?
Well, I mean, I guess the key thing I'd focus on there is the converged story that Zerto has now. Having one product to manage drastically reduces your resource management overhead. And by doing that, you're actually freeing up your IT teams to focus on innovation for your business and actually focus on revenue generating streams that they could potentially be looking at from that side of things, rather than managing a day-to-day backup. Also, having that single product delivering the one outcome ultimately means that you're utilizing less storage. You don't have a backup tool utilizing storage and then a replication tool utilizing storage. Instead, Zerto is providing both of those capabilities with that one solution. So there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained there.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for your time.
No worries. Thank you very much, Phil.